Wondering about you. Do you like teenage girls?
When you say teenage, how are we talking?
Yeah, Ikhwan, it's Robo the Rebel back with another video. Today's video, R. Kelly's been convicted of racketeering and 8 counts of sexual assault. But before we get to the video, even a smile is charity, so go ahead and give your brother Sadaka by like, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. So let's just jump into it here. R. Kelly was convicted yesterday of racketeering or RICO charges and 8 counts of sexual assault. So the initial clip was an interview that R. Kelly did with a guy named Teray. He was throwing R. Kelly softball questions, and R. Kelly fumbled the questions. Let's go ahead and take a look at that video.
Wondering about you. Do you like teenage girls?
When you say teenage, how are we talking?
Girls who are teenagers,
19?
19 and younger.
I have some 19-year-old friends, but I don't like anybody illegal, if that's what we're talking about, underage.
Some people think that you like underage girls. What do you say to them?
Well, those people that don't know Robert, they don't know me, so I usually don't get into what people think about me, because all my career, even before the trial, people have had their opinions about Robert, and that's probably because it has a lot to do with me. I kind of shy away from the crowd, because I'm always in the studio, digging deep into the basement all the time of my house, creating music. So, people, when they don't know you and they can't really touch you like they could someone else, they seem to form opinions or have thoughts about you that they like to, think. So.
Some of the people who have worked with you have said that there's an issue here. Your former manager has said publicly that there's an issue of concern here. Your brother Kerry has said there's an issue of concern here.
Issue of concern? What do you mean when you say issue of concern?
They've said that they're concerned that you like underage girls.
So let me pause it here. So Teray was actually throwing R. Kelly softball questions there, and R. Kelly just totally, even Teray was flummoxed when he said, "Do you like teenage girls?" And R. Kelly said, "Well, how young are you talking?" Teray didn't even have a response to that, because obviously it's a softball question, right? These guys were friends with R. Kelly during this time, and as far back as the 90s. Teray and a lot of these guys who were on that Surviving R. Kelly documentary, which I'm going to get into later, some of their backgrounds and some of their history. But this guy was throwing him a softball question because they were friends. He was an industry guy. These guys are industry. They were trying to make a name for themselves by interviewing R. Kelly. So it was a softball question. Do you like underage girls? Obvious answer is no. In any don't 19 18 19, no, forget no. So even Teray was flummoxed when R. Kelly said that. But that video was used in the documentary, and it's been circulating on the internet for a while. R. Kelly I obviously couldn't even hide his proclivities, even to just simply say no at that point. So we're gonna get into some of the footage of the actual trial here,
Deal.
or excuse me, the
Right.
coverage.
So I expect that R. Kelly certainly will argue on appeal, as he argued in front of the trial court that he was not an enterprise, which is what prosecutors have to prove in a racketeering case, that he was just one person. And so this structure didn't fit. But Lester, this, while a new use of RICO, is certainly not unprecedented. In fact, just last year, the same federal prosecutors over in Brooklyn, New York, made a racketeering case against Nixium, alleging that it too was a criminal enterprise involving sex trafficking and similar offenses. And the jury came back very quickly in that case as well, within a day. Really unusual in such a long trial to give such a resounding verdict all across the board and to affirm the prosecution's theory.
So let me stop right there. So notice how she switched up the argument there. So racketeering, right? Most of the time you think it's a criminal enterprise, and the prosecutors use that to go after R. Kelly because it allowed them to um, enter in all kinds of different charges, things as far back as him having sex with Aaliyah. Nothing had to be proved; it only had to be alleged. They allow many people to get up and testify and say whatever that was basically unchallenged, right? There's no way to refute what someone saw, right? There was no proof of he said, she said. And this is not to defend R. Kelly because I honestly believe that he was he's a predator and so forth. As far back as when he married Aaliyah. When he married Aaliyah in 1995, I was like 21, and um, I was 21, 22, and he married Aaliyah and she was 14, 15. And I was like, wait a minute, that's a kid. I'm looking at her and I'm like, she's a little kid. She didn't even look like a grown woman, right? There's some people say there's some teenagers who look like grown women who body shapes look. She actually looked like a prepubescent child. And I'm sitting there like, this guy is sick. So from that point forward, I never, never, ever listened to R. Kelly's music, never uh, played any of his songs, or I just was not an R. Kelly fan. So I never supported the guy from that point moving forward until today. So this is not about defending R. Kelly. This is just about some of the things that was thrown into this trial. So they used RICO and to say, okay, it was criminal enterprise, and that allowed them to bring in, I was listening to R. Kelly, one of R. Kelly's lawyers for his Chicago trial. He was taken off of this trial, and he said these guys kind of flummoxed the case by they were inexperienced. They allowed a lot of things to go unchallenged, and he said he would have never allowed certain things to be entered that they didn't charge, or excuse me, they couldn't refute some of these guys saying, well, I saw this. Well, there's no proof. How can you allow this? Is kind of the same thing that happened with Bill Cosby, right? They allowed a lot of women to get up and just say, hey, well, he did this, totally unchallenged, totally not factual, just someone's basically hearsay, right? And so so then she said, though it's not new, it's something that isn't typical to charge RICO against one person. Well, they just charged Nixium, and it was convicted. It meaning Nixium was an actual organization. It wasn't one singular person. It was an actual organization. So the feds just brought a RICO case against an actual organization, and she hurry up and quickly tried to draw a parallel between Nixium and R. Kelly and say, oh, well, they just did it to Nixium. But Nixium was actually a organization. R. Kelly isn't. So now, like I said, I'm not shedding any tears for R. Kelly. It's just setting a precedent that, okay, when the feds want to get you, or they can enact any kind of law to get you, or they can charge you with anything. As a matter of fact, those 8 counts of sexual assault, guess what they were? They were the Mann Act, right? And we know how racist the Mann Act was. It was actually a law enacted to convict the heavyweight champion Jack Johnson back in the early 1910s, 19 teens, 1918, or so I think is when he got convicted. But they came up with this law because Jack Johnson, he liked white women. He liked to marry white women, and he was going to have a white woman on his arm. And he would take these white women across state lines with him to have sex with him and so forth. So they came up with the Mann Act, and it's crazy that this law is still on the books. This law is still on the books, with its clearly racist intent to convict Jack Johnson of some type of crime because all of the great white hopes during that time could not beat this man. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. Let's keep going here and let's see what else they have to say. But these people on the news are not slick. You know, she tried to make a parallel between R. Kelly, a singular person, and Nixium, which is actually an organization that was convicted of racketeering. So let's keep going here.
The whole idea, though, of racketeering, does it not implicate potential others who have created some sort of a network or organization? And to that, my question, I guess, is will others who will be seen as enablers perhaps face justice?
It is quite possible that they will, and the prosecution did put in lots of evidence of the other people who, together with R. Kelly, comprised this enterprise, members of his entourage, his assistants, all of whom facilitated the underlying acts of racketeering that were alleged in this case.
Are you surprised that the jury, I guess they deliberated looking at 9 hours. Does that sound reasonable to you, given the number of charges?
Oh,
Well, before she answers, let me answer. No, it's not surprising. R. Kelly was finished the moment that documentary came out. I mean, the moment that Surviving R. Kelly documentary came out, we knew R. Kelly was finished. And then, Gloria Allred jumped on the case. So we were like, okay, a shakedown's coming. If he got any kind of money left, a shakedown's coming. She's going to get some money for women's rights groups. The Mute R. Kelly movement, all these kind of movements sprang up around this time. So we understood that, and like I said, deservedly so. Like I said, in my book, he was wrong for marrying Aaliyah. And like I said, if you listen, anyone listening to this, if you supported R. Kelly after 1995, you're part of the problem, because he was a sexual predator then. He's one now. He's going to prison. And that's justice served. But I just don't like the way they are trying to serve justice. Meaning they could bend the law and bend the rules to get who they want. Then that means they can do that to any one of us. So it's, hey, look, convict him fairly, fair trial, what have you. Don't wiggle and throw all these different charges at him to try to make something stick. But, like I said, I'm not crying about R. Kelly, but a lot of times celebrities like R. Kelly and Bill Cosby are used as proxies for black men in general and the black community specifically. Okay, so I want to jump over here to look at some of these some of the pictures here, some of the documentaries. This is Dream Hampton. She's the executive producer of the Surviving R. Kelly documentary. This is when she was young, right? Okay, not a bad looking girl here, right? I think a lot of times that she was able to get in certain places because of her looks. She was able to hobnob with a lot of the rappers back in the 90s and the early 2000s, 2010s and so forth, right? She was their girl. She was the go-to, right? She was the one that, here she is hugged up with Jay-Z, right? A lot of there's rumors out there, and it's all alleged, that she was having sex with some of these guys. Jay-Z, one of them. The next guy here, Notorious B.I.G., was another that she was alleged to have had sex with. But then Dream Hampton, she was a writer for Vibe magazine. She did a lot of articles about R. Kelly, lots of them, praising R. Kelly, even when he beat the first case, which I'll get into that one a little bit later as well. He obviously paid off the families to not testify against him because he should have been guilty, right? With this alleged, I wouldn't even call it a sex tape, because the girl in the tape was underage allegedly. I don't know. I've never seen it. I never wanted to watch it. But there's some dirtbags that come later that wanted to watch this thing and actually watched it and commented on it. But then look what happened to Dream Hampton, right? Dream Hampton hit the wall. Look at her. This is what she kind of looks like today. I don't know if she looks better or worse. Probably worse. But this is around the time when she decided to be the executive producer on the Surviving R. Kelly documentary. So she hit the wall. She looks like I don't know. I can't even. Looks like a beach whale or something. Looks struggling. She has no more inroads to the hip hop industry. So what does she do? to make a name for herself. Let me produce this documentary. Now, you knew about all these things that R. Kelly was alleged of because she was part of the inner circle back then, right? She was part of the inner circle back then, so she knew about it. And here's this guy, Teray, who conducted the interview, like I said earlier, with R. Kelly. You know, he was an insider. And then he's accused of sexual assault. So is this why he was throwing those softball questions to R. Kelly? Because he was doing the same thing, allegedly, right? You know what I mean? These guys are a lot of dirtbags in this industry. This is why I'm saying the people on the Surviving R. Kelly documentary, most of them were just as, I feel is just as culpable, because they knew what was going on. They never said a word. And then all of a sudden, R. Kelly falls out of grace with the industry, I guess. He's not as hot as he was. So now let's go out to R. Kelly here, right? And then, you know, we get to this dirtbag, right? Charlemagne the God. R. Kelly looks 20-something. The fountain of youth clearly can be found within teenage vagina. This guy's making jokes about it. So you can't tell me that these people did not know what was going on. They knew what was going on, and they allowed it, right? This is the thing. This is why I'm saying, even for those quote-unquote fans who bought the music, you knew he married Aaliyah. Come on now. The music wasn't that good. I heard some of it. I'm like, it ain't good enough for me to support it. And I heard it, you know, just in general, pass by or whatever. You know, it's on social media, whatever it is. Furthermore, R. Kelly had the best celebrity sex tape of all time. This guy is a dirtbag. He's on the documentary. He's on that Surviving R. Kelly documentary. Now, this is two of the people being interviewed on the Surviving R. Kelly documentary who also had their own sexual assault allegations. These are people Dream Hampton picked and put on this documentary. Why? Because these people all run in the same circles. They all know what's going on. They been knew what R. Kelly was doing. They been knew. R. Kelly is thinking Barack's daughters can get it. I mean, what kind of guy, what kind of grown man thinks this kind of stuff? This is 2009. So it wasn't like Charlemagne was a little kid. And here goes Andrea Kelly, right? She's on the documentary. This is from the Surviving R. Kelly documentary, as a matter of fact. But no, she never said anything. She divorces R. Kelly, and then she's running around on all these different reality shows trying to make some kind of name and fame for herself. You know, she never said anything. Now she's up here on this documentary talking about all the kind of horrible stuff that he did. Come on, man, stop. You guys enabled this dude. Here go these two idiots. They were parents of I think her name was Jocelyn Savage, right? These two idiots, they're taking their daughter backstage to R. Kelly concerts because the mom and dad grew up with him in the 90s because they're around the same age. They grew up, they taking her to, oh, she wants to be a singer. Let's go take her to meet R. Kelly. Send her up to Chicago with her older sister. Like, are you insane? These two idiots. And the other two were just as stupid. I couldn't even find a picture of those idiots. You know? These people are nuts. And like I said, and this is not to excuse R. Kelly, but this is the place blame squarely where it belongs on all these people. Here's Sparkle. Sparkle said her little goddaughter or niece was the one in the, you know, I call it, you know, different kind of tape, you know, but she was the one in that other tape of the one with R. Kelly, the one he went to trial on. And she said, "Oh, I knew it was him." And you said nothing because R. Kelly was trying to get your career popping. You kept your mouth shut back then. You ain't say anything. Now you're up here on this thing crying, you know, 20 years later. It's silly. You know. So you know, we got some work that we have to do in the black community here. You know, just because the man's music is good, I still see people say now, I can separate the man from the music. Well, how? The music is what allowed him to have the funds to pay off or bypass any accountability for 20, 30 years, however long he's been in the business. Now, we don't talk about how he got his start, right? Because he was molested and so forth. And, you know, my sympathies goes out to anyone who's been victimized in that way, right? Even for him, he just never got the help that he needed to get, and then he turned around and victimized other people. But we got some healing we got to do. We can't just look past certain things because someone made music that we like. We have to, we have to do better in our community. So, for those of you who are gonna still play R. Kelly music, again, you know, you played it after 1995. You were an enabler. The guy is a sexual predator. You enabled that behavior by giving him the means in order to circumvent justice and to continue to victimize people. So those are my final thoughts, brothers. Assalamu alaikum.